After Mom died from cancer, Dad started calling me by her name and buying me her clothes. When I woke up to him on my bed with roses and their wedding song playing, I locked myself in the bathroom. Then I found out I was pregnant despite never being with anyone. The fertility clinic had security footage of him carrying my unconscious body inside during the days after Mom's funeral when I thought I was just grieving. My name is Luke, and the day my mother died, the world seemed to break in half. It felt like it was always too quiet, too still, like the silence had replaced everything else. That was the way grief settled over my father. He was never the same after she passed. My mother's death wasn't just the end of her life. It felt like the end of everything good. I was only 19, but I had to grow up fast, trying to hold on to him, to keep everything from falling apart. But no matter how hard I tried, it was like my father was slipping further away, like he was disappearing into a grief that was far too big for either of us to manage. I tried talking to him, but he was always distracted, always staring at something in the distance, like he was looking for something that wasn't there anymore. It started with small things, things I didn't even notice at first. He'd call me by my mother's name sometimes. "Sarah, could you help me with this?" he'd ask, his voice thick with exhaustion. The first few times, I thought it was just a slip of the tongue, but it started happening more often, and it hit me like a wave of cold water each time. "Sarah," he'd say again, and I'd freeze, confused, unsure of how to respond. Then, there were the clothes. My mother's clothes. The ones she'd left behind in her closet, still hanging there like she might walk in any moment. My father started buying new things for me, but it wasn't just any clothes. It was her clothes. The ones I'd never thought about touching, because they were hers. He didn't even tell me why he was doing it. I'd come home from work, and there they'd be. New blouses, new skirts, and dresses that were too bright for me to wear. I just stared at them, my hands frozen in place. And it wasn't just the clothes. He started making dinner the way she used to, too. Her recipes. Her flavors. I tried, really tried, to eat it without saying anything. But it felt like I was choking on something I couldn't explain. It wasn't the food itself. It was the feeling that came with it. Like he was trying to recreate her, piece by piece, as if she had never left. One night, after dinner, when he'd cooked one of her favorite dishes, her chicken casserole, I tried to sit down and just relax. But everything felt wrong. The air was thick with the tension I couldn't escape. He kept looking at me, his eyes searching for something, like he was trying to figure out what had happened to his world. He didn't talk about her much anymore, not directly. But there was something in the way he looked at me, like he thought I could replace her, like I was some kind of stand-in. "I never should have let her go," he said quietly, staring at the empty plate in front of him. It wasn't even a question, just a statement. I swallowed, feeling like my throat was closing up. "Dad?" I started, but my voice faltered. "You didn't. She didn't just go. It was..." My words trailed off, and I couldn't finish. He wouldn't let me. He looked up at me, his eyes almost pleading. "I didn't want you to leave, either. I never did. I didn't want to lose her. But I lost her anyway. And now I'm stuck with you, Luke. I didn't know what I was doing until she was gone." The words stung, but I couldn't tell him that. I couldn't say how much it hurt to feel like he was trying to replace her in me. But he was, and I wasn't sure if he even realized it. It felt like I was suffocating in my own home, drowning in the expectations he put on me without even knowing he was doing it. I pushed the plate away, suddenly unable to eat anymore. "Dad, I'm not her. I'm not Sarah." He blinked at me, as if he hadn't heard what I said. But then, a few seconds later, he nodded. "I know, son," he said softly, his voice cracking. "I know, but I wish you were. I wish you could be." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He was already too far gone, and I was starting to realize that this wasn't just about my mother anymore. This was about my father clinging to whatever memory of her he could find, even if it meant losing me along the way. That night, everything felt off. The usual quiet in the house had turned into a kind of hum, like the air was thick with something I couldn't place. I couldn't even remember what time I finally got to sleep, but I woke up in a cold sweat around 3 a.m., the feeling of someone else's presence in the room pressing in on me. I opened my eyes, heart pounding, convinced that my mind was playing tricks on me. The darkness in the room was absolute. But there, in the corner near the doorway, I saw a figure. My father. His back was to me, but I could hear his breathing, slow and measured, like he was waiting for something. "Dad," I called out, my voice weak and unsteady. He didn't move. I wasn't sure if he heard me, or if he was pretending not to. He hadn't been the same since Mom passed, but this was different. This was too far. He didn't even acknowledge me, didn't react at all. The silence in the room grew heavier. I sat up, heart racing. "Dad, what are you doing?" I asked again, my voice rising slightly, desperate. Finally, he turned, his eyes glassy, and in that moment, I could see that something was terribly wrong. His expression was blank, almost serene. He looked at me like he didn't even recognize me, or maybe as if he was seeing something else entirely. "I thought you'd want to know," he said in a low, hoarse voice, stepping closer, his steps too slow, too deliberate. I was frozen. I didn't know whether to get up or stay still. "It's time to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" I asked, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This wasn't him. This wasn't my father anymore. "It's our anniversary," he murmured. "Sarah and I's anniversary. You know, the day we got married." My throat went dry. "Dad, it's not. It's not her anymore. Mom's gone." He didn't seem to hear me. His eyes stayed locked on mine, but it was like they were looking through me. He stepped forward again, his hands reaching out toward me. "I put on the record," he said, his voice cracking slightly, almost like he was ashamed. "The one we used to dance to. Don't you remember?" I pulled myself out of bed, stepping back. "No, Dad," I said, feeling panic set in. "This isn't right. You need to snap out of it." I took another step back, but he didn't move. He just stood there, still, staring at me like I was some kind of stranger. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I turned to leave, but then, as I reached the door, his voice called out to me, softer now. "You're the one she wanted, Luke. You're the one who's going to take care of me now." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know what was real anymore, or if this was some twisted dream I couldn't wake up from. I walked into the living room, needing to escape the weight of his stare, but when I walked through the hallway, something caught my eye. A bouquet of roses, freshly cut, sitting on the coffee table. Their vibrant red petals looked out of place, stark against the empty house. But that wasn't what froze me in place. It was the card. It was my mother's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. "To my dearest Luke, with all my love. Forever yours." My heart dropped, the floor seeming to tilt beneath me as I picked up the card. The ink was faded in spots, as if it had been sitting here for longer than I realized. My mind raced, and for the first time in weeks, the overwhelming grief I'd been holding at bay started to claw its way to the surface. It wasn't just that he was still holding on. It was that he was trying to make me hold on too, to take my mother's place, to fill that emptiness she left behind. I dropped the card, my hands trembling. The roses looked like they had been here for days, maybe even weeks, waiting for me to notice. Suddenly, the dizziness hit. The room spun, the walls seemed to close in, and I stumbled back to the couch, clutching my head. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps. I hadn't felt this dizzy in months. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my ears. It was too much to take in all at once. When my father's voice broke through the fog, I could barely understand what he was saying. "I put the medicine in your water, Luke," he said softly, his voice almost comforting. "You'll feel better soon. Just relax." I stumbled to my feet, my vision blurry. My stomach churned as I realized what he meant. Anxiety medication. The pills he'd been giving me for weeks, maybe even longer. "You've been drugging me?" I whispered, the words barely audible as the weight of everything started to settle in. His face softened, and he smiled, but it wasn't the comforting smile I'd always known. It was an empty, distant smile, as if he was lost in some dream he couldn't escape. "You've been so stressed, Luke," he said. "I just want you to feel better. I want you to feel safe again." And that was the moment. The moment I realized this wasn't just grief anymore. This was something else entirely. It wasn't love. It wasn't care. It was control. He had been trying to replace my mother with me, trying to force me into a role I never asked for, a role I couldn't fill. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make him see what he was doing, or if it was even possible to fix this. But as I sat there, unable to move, everything I had been avoiding for the past few weeks finally hit me. My father wasn't the man I thought he was. He wasn't even a shadow of the man he used to be. And now, it felt like there was no way out. The days after that night passed in a haze. My father's strange behavior continued, but I started to feel like I was losing my grip on everything. Every time I tried to speak to him, he was either too distracted, too distant, or too wrapped up in his own grief to hear me. I was slipping further away from him, and that scared me more than anything else. It wasn't just the pills, though. It was the constant reminders. The way he referred to me as Sarah, the way he would buy me clothes that weren't mine to wear, and the way he kept playing her favorite songs on repeat. I couldn't breathe without feeling her absence pressing down on me. But somehow, it was worse when he tried to replace her with me. I couldn't escape it. It was everywhere, all around me, suffocating me. I started feeling more like a stranger in my own home than ever before. The house itself felt unfamiliar, even though it was where I had grown up. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the loneliness felt more palpable than the grief itself. One evening, as I was sitting in the living room, trying to force myself to focus on a book I had no interest in, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Luke, I have something you need to see. Meet me at the clinic tomorrow. I'll explain everything." Trust me. I didn't know who it was, but something about the message felt urgent. There was no name, just an unsettling sense of secrecy that gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from me, something important. Maybe it was about my father. Maybe it was about me. But I couldn't ignore the strange pull to find out what this was all about. The next day, I drove to the fertility clinic, the one my mom had gone to years ago when I was just a kid. I hadn't been back since her treatments. I thought about turning around, but my gut told me I couldn't. I had to know. When I arrived, I walked into the sterile, white-walled building, feeling more out of place than ever. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on her nose, looked up when I approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cool but polite. "I'm here to meet someone," I said, unsure how much I should tell her. "They said I should come by today." She narrowed her eyes slightly before nodding. "Have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." I sat, the waiting room empty except for a few magazines and a small potted plant sitting in the corner. The silence felt too loud. After what felt like an eternity, a man came through the door, his face unfamiliar, but his posture confident. "You're Luke, right?" he asked, his voice direct. I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. He looked around, checking to make sure no one was watching. Then, he led me down a long hallway into a small office in the back. He closed the door behind him and sat across from me. "Listen, I know this is going to sound crazy," he started, taking a deep breath. "But I have something you need to see. Something you've probably been asking yourself for a long time." I sat forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you talking about?" He pulled out a folder, thick with papers, and slid it across the desk toward me. "Your father came here a while back. Not just for treatment, but for something else. Something you don't know about." I picked up the folder, the weight of it too heavy in my hands. "What is this?" "Just look," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You're not going to believe it, but it's the truth." I opened the folder, and my eyes went straight to the top page. A series of forms, most of them signed by my father, but the one that caught my attention was the fertility record, a file I never thought I'd find in connection to my family. My mind raced as I scanned through the details. My father had gone to this clinic after my mother's death. He'd signed a consent form for sperm donation. And what stopped me in my tracks was the date, the days after my mother's funeral. I felt the world tilt beneath me as I slowly turned the page, my fingers trembling. It wasn't just a simple donation. There was a record of procedures, tests, and medical actions that didn't make sense. And as I read further, it hit me. My father had orchestrated everything. He hadn't just been grieving. He'd been planning. There was a note, scribbled at the bottom of the page, to preserve her legacy. My stomach dropped. I could feel the air in the room thinning, my breath quickening. He'd done this without me knowing. He had done it to replace my mother, and now I understood why he had been acting the way he had. This wasn't just about keeping her memory alive. This was about making sure he didn't have to face the world without her, and without facing the reality that he had lost her forever. I swallowed hard, trying to process everything. "Your father, Luke," the man said quietly. "He didn't just want to preserve her memory. He wanted to bring her back." I shook my head, not understanding. "What do you mean?" The man leaned forward, his voice low. "He arranged for you to become part of something bigger than you could have imagined. He wanted to recreate her, to use you in a way that would keep her here, with him." I felt the world slip away from me as I tried to understand what he was telling me. My father had been manipulating me this entire time. He wasn't just grieving. He was trying to control me, to make me someone I could never be, someone I didn't want to be. "You need to get out of there," the man said firmly. "You need to stop him before it's too late." I couldn't breathe. Everything the man had said hit me like a ton of bricks. My father had orchestrated everything. My grief, my isolation, my doubts. He wasn't just trying to preserve the memory of my mother. He was trying to create a new version of her, and I was supposed to be the bridge. He wanted me to become her, to take her place in a twisted game I had never agreed to play. I left the clinic in a daze, the weight of the folder pressing against my chest like an anchor. I barely remembered the drive home, my mind consumed with a storm of thoughts I couldn't sort through. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My father's face, his empty eyes, his distant voice. Everything came crashing down around me. How had I been so blind? How had I let this happen without seeing what was right in front of me? By the time I got home, the evening had fallen. I parked in the driveway, not even bothering to turn off the car. My mind was racing too fast for me to make sense of anything. I had to confront him. There was no other choice. I walked into the house, trying to steady myself, trying to calm my breathing, but I felt like I was suffocating. The air was thick, like it had been when I found the roses on the table. The house still felt like it belonged to my mother, but every corner, every shadow, felt wrong now. He was sitting in his armchair in the living room, the same one he used to sit in with my mother when they'd watch their favorite shows together. The space between us felt endless, but I walked toward him anyway. He didn't look up. He didn't even seem to register my presence. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to talk." He didn't respond. The TV played softly in the background, the noise barely cutting through the tense silence. I took a few more steps, my heart pounding in my chest. "Dad," I repeated, louder this time. "I know what you've been doing." His head turned slowly, and for a moment, I thought he wasn't going to say anything. Then, he just nodded, as if he'd been waiting for me to figure it out. "You've been going to the clinic," I said, my voice cracking. "You've been making decisions for me without telling me. You've been—" I stopped myself, taking a shaky breath. "You've been trying to make me into something I'm not." He didn't seem angry, just tired. "You're the only one left, Luke," he said softly. "You're the only one who can help me hold on to her." I recoiled, stunned. "Help you? Dad, I'm not her. I'm your son. You need to let go." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, a brief flash of confusion, maybe even hurt. "I can't, Luke," he whispered. "I just can't. If I let go, I lose everything. I lose her. I lose you." The words cut through me like a knife. He was so far gone, so wrapped up in his own grief that he couldn't see what he was doing to me, what he was forcing me to become. He wasn't trying to bring her memory to life. He was trying to replace her with me. "You have to stop," I said, my voice firm. "This isn't love. It's control. You're suffocating me." "I'm trying to save us," he murmured, his eyes glassy. "I'm trying to save you too." The room felt colder now, the distance between us growing even larger. "I'm not the answer, Dad. You have to stop this. I can't be her. I can't live in her place for you." He stood up suddenly, his movements jerky and unsettling. "You don't understand," he said, his voice rising. "I need you, Luke. You're the only one who can fix this. If you leave, if you abandon me, then I lose her all over again." I took a step back, feeling the panic rising in my chest. "You're not losing her, Dad. You're just letting her go. And so am I." His face twisted with frustration, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something like anger flicker in his eyes. "You think you can just walk away from me? From this? From everything I've done for you?" I flinched, feeling a weight I hadn't expected. "You've been doing this for you, not me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't be the person you want me to be. I can't be Sarah." The room went still, and I could see the battle playing out in his eyes. He wasn't angry anymore. He was desperate. "Luke," he said quietly, taking a step toward me. "Please. I can't lose you. Not to." But I knew that I couldn't stay. I couldn't continue being trapped in this cycle of manipulation, of grief that wasn't mine to bear. I took another step back, my feet feeling heavy, my heart breaking. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, my voice cracking. "But I can't stay here anymore. I can't be the person you want me to be." I turned away, heading for the door, not sure where I was going, but knowing I couldn't stay another second. As I stepped outside, I felt the cold air hit me, but it wasn't enough to wash away the weight in my chest. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew I couldn't live like this. Not for another minute. The drive to nowhere seemed to stretch on forever. But the only thing I could think about was the future. What did I do now? Where did I go from here? I didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I might finally be free. The days that followed felt like a blur. I'd left the house, left my father, but the weight of what had happened between us still hung over me. I kept thinking about the way he'd looked at me, his desperate eyes, and the things he had said. The more I tried to push it out of my mind, the more it clawed its way back in. I wasn't ready to let go of everything. Not yet. But I knew I had to. The distance between us had already stretched too far, and the pain of it was too much to bear. The hardest part was knowing that I couldn't fix what had been broken. And maybe I wasn't supposed to. But as much as I tried to focus on myself, there was one thing I couldn't ignore. The feeling that my father wasn't done with me. He wasn't done with his obsession, with trying to make me into something I wasn't. And the more I distanced myself from him, the more he seemed to tighten his grip. A week later, I received a call that sent my heart into my throat. It was from an unfamiliar number. Hesitantly, I answered. "Luke," a voice said, unfamiliar but steady. "I need to speak with you. It's important. It's about your father." My pulse quickened, and I felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. "Who is this?" "My name is Jordan," the voice said. "I'm a private investigator. I've been hired to look into some things related to your father. Specifically, the fertility clinic and the arrangements he made there." I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean? What kind of things?" "I think it's better if we meet in person," Jordan said. "Can you meet me tomorrow? I'll explain everything." I didn't hesitate. There was no way I could ignore it now. Whatever it was, whatever my father had been hiding, it was bigger than I had imagined. And I was finally starting to understand that this wasn't just about my father's grief anymore. This was about something far darker. Something he'd been hiding from me for far too long. The next day, I drove to a small coffee shop downtown, a place I'd never been before. When I walked inside, I saw a man sitting at a corner table. He was mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and a pair of glasses. His face was sharp, his eyes alert, as if he was always looking for something. He looked up as I approached and nodded. "Luke?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Yeah," I said, sitting down across from him. "What's going on? What did you find out about my father?" Jordan leaned in slightly, glancing around the room as if making sure no one was listening. "It's more complicated than I thought. Your father wasn't just going to the fertility clinic for treatment. He wasn't just getting counseling or help with his grief. He was trying to do something else. Something illegal." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Illegal? What do you mean?" Jordan opened a folder in front of him and slid it toward me. Inside were copies of documents, forms that looked far too official, too detailed to be real. They were filled with medical terms I didn't understand, but one thing stood out immediately. At the top of the page, "Luke Turner, medical consent form." "That's my name," I said, my voice tight. "What is this?" Jordan exhaled slowly. "Your father wasn't just trying to get his grief under control. He made arrangements. The clinic was aware of it, but only recently. He paid for procedures, for treatments, all to manipulate things." He paused. "Luke, you were part of something that was kept hidden from you. Your father was trying to implant his sperm into someone else, someone at the clinic, in a way that wasn't legal. He was trying to replace your mother, trying to use you to continue her bloodline without her." I felt the room spin around me. The papers in front of me were blurring, but I couldn't look away. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "That's not possible." Jordan shook his head. "It's possible, and it's been happening for a while. He didn't just grieve your mother's death. He tried to recreate her. And in doing so, he crossed a line." The weight of it hit me all at once, crashing through me like a wave. My father hadn't been trying to honor my mother's memory. He'd been trying to replace her. And I'd been a pawn in a game I didn't even know existed. "Where does this leave me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do I do now?" Jordan looked at me with a sharp, knowing gaze. "You need to take action. Your father's obsession is dangerous. It's consuming him, and if you don't stop him now, he'll drag you deeper into it. You're already a part of this, whether you realize it or not. He's manipulated everything, including you." I swallowed hard, feeling like I was sinking. "How do I stop him?" Jordan pushed the folder toward me. "You have to confront him with what you know. He can't keep hiding behind this delusion. But you need evidence, proof that he's done this, that he's been manipulating not just your life, but others as well. If you don't, he'll just keep pushing forward, and you'll lose more of yourself." The weight of the decision crushed me. Confronting my father with the truth would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it was the only way to break free from this web he had spun around me. I nodded slowly, determination settling in. "I'll do it. I'll stop him." The next few days were a blur. I couldn't shake the thoughts that were constantly racing in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, his hollow, desperate expression, and the way he had tried to control me. It made my skin crawl. I had to do something. I had to stop him. Jordan's words kept echoing in my head. "You need evidence." I knew he was right. If I was going to confront my father, I needed to have the truth on my side. But how could I get the proof I needed? My father was too careful, too secretive. Every time I thought I was close to something, I felt like I was being pulled back, as if I was too late, too far behind to catch up with his twisted plans. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. But then something in my gut told me where to go. The fertility clinic. If my father had been doing something there, something illegal, there had to be a paper trail, a record of everything he'd done. The next morning, I didn't waste any time. I drove to the clinic. It felt wrong, sneaking around like this, but I didn't have a choice. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I had to find something that would give me the leverage I needed. When I arrived, I made my way inside with a sense of determination that I hadn't felt in weeks. I approached the receptionist, a woman in her early 30s with kind eyes, and gave her a quick smile. "Hi," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of thoughts inside my head. "I need to speak with someone about my father's treatments here. I'm his son, Luke Turner." Her eyes flicked to the computer screen in front of her, her fingers typing quickly. "Mr. Turner," she said, reading aloud. "Yes, I see here that he's been receiving. Is there any way I could see his file?" I interrupted, trying to keep my voice casual. "I need to understand the full extent of his treatments. I know he's been coming here for a while, but I'm afraid I don't have all the details." She hesitated, looking at me for a moment as though weighing something in her mind. Then she glanced around the office, ensuring no one else was nearby. "I'm not sure I can give you access to his medical file without his permission," she said softly, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough to make sure no one else could hear. "Look, I don't know how much you know, but my father's been struggling. And I'm concerned. He's been doing things, making decisions that I don't understand. I need answers. I'm not here to cause trouble, but I'm worried for him. And for me. The receptionist's expression softened, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes. I understand, she said quietly, but I still need authorization to release any of this information. I nodded, frustrated but trying to keep it together. Okay then. Could I speak with someone in charge? Someone who can explain things to me? She gave me a quick, sympathetic smile. I'll let the doctor know you're here. Please have a seat. I sat down, my mind racing. I didn't have much time. I knew that much. But I also knew that if I didn't get the answers now, I might never have the chance again. It felt like an eternity before the door to the back office opened, and a tall woman in a white lab coat stepped out. She was in her late 40s, with short brown hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. Mr. Turner? She asked, her eyes scanning me quickly. I'm Dr. Harris. I understand you're here regarding your father's treatments? I stood up, my pulse quickening. Yes. I need to understand exactly what he's been doing here. What kind of treatments? What kinds of procedures? She looked at me with a neutral expression, clearly weighing whether or not to share anything with me. Your father has been under care for some time, but I can't give you specifics without his consent. I don't think you understand, I said, my voice firm but calm. I'm not just here for an explanation. I need to know what my father has been involved in. He's been making decisions that don't make sense. I think he's been manipulating me, and I think he's been manipulating you, too. I need you to tell me everything. Dr. Harris didn't respond at first. She just stood there, her fingers tapping lightly on the clipboard in her hand. But then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. I can't give you everything, Luke, she said, her voice almost a whisper. But I will tell you this. Your father came to us asking for help with grief. But there was more to it. Much more. He wanted something specific. Something unusual. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean, unusual? She glanced over her shoulder, making sure no one was listening. Then, she stepped closer and handed me a sheet of paper. It was a copy of a consent form, and my name was written at the top. Your father requested a procedure, Dr. Harris said quietly. It wasn't what we usually do here. But he was persistent, and in his grief, he insisted. He wanted to preserve your mother's legacy. He wanted her back. My hands trembled as I read the form. The words blurred together, and I felt my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My father hadn't just been grieving my mother. He'd been trying to bring her back, and he'd been using me as a vessel to do it. I looked up at Dr. Harris, my voice tight. What exactly did he want? She shook her head. I can't say, but I'll tell you this. What your father requested was, it wasn't legal. It was unethical. And now, it's starting to catch up with him. A wave of nausea hit me. I had to stop him. I had to put an end to this before it consumed both of us completely. Where is he now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He's still in the system, Dr. Harris said, lowering her voice. But I'm warning you, Luke, if you don't do something now, it may be too late. The day after my meeting with Dr. Harris felt like I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. My hands trembled as I drove home, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. I knew now what I had to do. I had to confront my father, but I wasn't sure I was ready for what that would mean. The drive back to the house felt like it took hours, though it was only a few minutes. The trees blurred as I passed, and I could barely focus on the road ahead. All I could think about was the truth, the horrifying truth, that my father had been trying to manipulate me, to force me into a role I could never take. And now, it wasn't just about grief. It was about control. When I pulled into the driveway, the house seemed more oppressive than usual. It loomed ahead of me, like a silent witness to everything that had been falling apart. I opened the door, and as I stepped inside, I could feel the heavy air of the house pressing in on me. It was almost like the walls were closing in, like the house itself was a tomb, and I was the last living thing left inside. I made my way down the hallway toward the living room. There he was, sitting in his chair, exactly where he had been the last time I spoke to him. He was staring at the TV, not even watching it, his hands resting loosely in his lap. He looked so frail, so fragile, that for a moment, I almost didn't want to do it. Almost. But I knew I had no choice. Dad, I said, my voice low but firm. He didn't look up, didn't even blink. It was like I was invisible. Dad, we need to talk, I repeated, taking a step closer. This time, he turned his head slowly, his eyes unfocused, like he was seeing something far away. He didn't recognize me anymore, not truly. He wasn't even here. I know what you've been doing, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. I know about the fertility clinic. I know about what you've been trying to do. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. His gaze drifted to the floor, and I could see his lips tremble. Was he ashamed? Or was he trying to justify it in his mind? It wasn't supposed to be like this, he whispered, his voice breaking. I thought if I could make you like her, if I could hold on to her somehow, it would all be okay. No, I said, my voice louder now, the words coming out more forcefully. You can't keep doing this. You can't replace her with me. You can't use me to bring her back. I'm not her. I never will be. He stood up suddenly, his face flushed with a mix of anger and confusion. You don't understand, he said, his voice rising. You don't know what it's like. I lost her. I lost everything. And you're the only one left. You're the only one who can fix this. Fix this. I repeated, stepping back. Dad, you're not broken. You're just hurting. But you can't fix that by trying to turn me into someone I'm not. He stumbled forward, his hands reaching out for me like he was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. You have to understand, Luke. I did it for us. I did it for you. If I didn't try, I would lose you too. I can't lose you. I can't lose her again. I stepped back, feeling the familiar sting of his words. You already lost her, I said quietly. But you can't keep pretending she's here. You have to let go, Dad. I'm not Sarah. I'm not her, and I never will be. His face twisted with something like grief, but it quickly shifted to something else. Something darker. He reached for a picture on the mantel, a photo of my mother. He held it out to me, his eyes frantic. She wanted this too, he said. She wanted us to stay together. She wanted us to survive. You're supposed to help me. You're supposed to be the one who doesn't leave. I couldn't take it anymore. I had tried for so long, tried to be the son he needed, tried to fill the role my mother had left behind. But it wasn't my role to fill, and it was killing me. I'm not going to be your replacement, I said, shaking my head, my voice steadying. And I'm not going to play along with this anymore. His face contorted with a mixture of anger and desperation. You think you can just walk away from me? His voice shook. After everything I've done for you? After everything I've given you? You didn't give me anything, I said, stepping away from him. You've been taking from me. You've been taking my life, my identity, and now, you're trying to take my future too. I won't let you. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like forever, and then, without a word, I turned and walked out of the house. It wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. But it was the only way. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have a plan. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free. The weight of my father's grief, his obsession, the suffocating grip he had on me, it was all too much. And I couldn't carry it anymore. The world outside the house felt different. It felt brighter, clearer, like I could finally breathe. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. The trial was over. After months of emotional turmoil, countless sleepless nights, and painful confrontations, it was finally done. My father had been placed in a psychiatric facility, his delusions shattered by the overwhelming evidence. I thought this sense of relief would come quickly, that I'd be able to breathe easy again. But even though the truth had been revealed, I still felt a kind of emptiness, a void where I had been holding on for far too long. It was hard to let go of all that anger, all that pain. But I knew I had to. I had to reclaim my life, and that meant putting the past behind me. The day the verdict came in, I sat in the small courtroom, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. It felt surreal, like the world was moving in slow motion. I had done what I thought I couldn't do, stand up to my father, break free from the web of lies he had spun. And now, as the judge spoke, as the decision was made official, I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders, piece by piece. But the weight of the emotional toll would take longer to shake off. It wasn't just the legal battles, the courtroom testimonies, or the cold, clinical words from doctors and lawyers that haunted me. It was the aftermath, the slow process of healing, of trying to rebuild a life that had been shattered. I hadn't been prepared for how difficult it would be to piece myself back together. But I had to try. The first few weeks were strange. I spent most of my time in the apartment I had rented, staring out the window at the unfamiliar world around me. It felt like everything was new again. Every sound, every interaction, every simple moment seemed foreign, like I was learning how to live all over again. But I wasn't alone. Slowly, I started reaching out to friends I hadn't spoken to in ages. People who had been there for me before everything went sideways. People who reminded me what it was like to be happy. They were patient with me, understanding when I needed space, but also there when I was ready to talk. They reminded me that I was still me, still the person I had been before my father's obsession consumed both of us. I started seeing a therapist, someone who could help me navigate the maze of emotions I was still tangled in. It wasn't easy, opening up to a stranger about the pain I'd been carrying for so long, but it was necessary. I needed someone to help me process everything, to help me understand that what happened wasn't my fault. And it wasn't. I had spent so long blaming myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for not doing more to stop my father's descent into madness. But my therapist helped me realize that I had done the best I could with what I knew at the time. As the weeks passed, I started to rebuild. It wasn't a smooth, easy process, but I was getting there. I found comfort in small, everyday things, cooking for myself again, making time for hobbies I had neglected, and even starting to run in the mornings. It was like I was rediscovering parts of myself that I had long forgotten. One afternoon, I found myself standing outside a small cafe, waiting for a coffee. I'd been there a few times since I moved into the apartment, but today felt different. Today, I didn't feel like I was pretending to be okay. I felt like I was actually starting to be okay. That was when I saw her. Marissa, my aunt, standing across the street. She looked different, her face softer, her expression hesitant. I hadn't seen her in months, not since everything came crashing down. She had distanced herself from the family after the truth about my father came out, but I had been hoping she would reach out. "Luke," she said, her voice uncertain, as she approached me. "Marissa," I said, surprised but not entirely unwelcoming. "I didn't expect to see you here." She smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I wasn't sure how to approach you after everything. But I've been thinking a lot. About what happened. About what I didn't see." I felt a mix of emotions, a rush of frustration, a flicker of hope. But mostly, I felt something I hadn't expected, gratitude. I had thought that everyone in my family would turn away from me. But here she was, willing to make the effort to reconnect. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for reaching out." She nodded, her eyes searching mine for a sign of whether I was ready to hear what she had to say. "I didn't know, Luke. I didn't understand what was going on. And I should have been there for you, but I didn't know how. I was blind to what was happening." I took a deep breath. I didn't want to hold on to the anger anymore. "It wasn't just you," I said, my voice soft but firm. "It wasn't just you who didn't see. I didn't see it either. I was too close to him." Marissa's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped closer. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for not being there when you needed me the most." I nodded, the lump in my throat thickening. "It's okay. I've had to do a lot of things on my own, but I'm still here. I'm still standing." We stood in silence for a moment, just absorbing the gravity of everything that had happened. But in that silence, something shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. "I'm here now," Marissa said, her voice steady. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I had spent so long fighting the past, fighting my father's control, fighting the weight of everything I had lost. But now, I was ready to let go. I wasn't the same person I had been before, and maybe that was okay. Maybe that was what healing looked like. And in that moment, with the support of those around me, I knew I could keep moving forward. I could finally reclaim my life. I was free.